Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here to share with you some of the things we are doing at UN Habitat. Our headquarters are in Nairobi, Kenya. And we, as most of the UN agencies now, are running out of funding. So we're trying to find out alternatives on how to have a bigger outreach at a lower cost. So I'm going to talk two case studies, as was mentioned. The first one is placing housing at the center. It's a call for a paradigm shift in the way governments are dealing with housing. Please have a look at these photos. So there are 64 million vacant units in China, 18.4 in the US, 3 in Egypt, 3.3 million in Maharashtra, India, and so on. These are called ghost towns. If you look at ghost towns on the internet, you'll see the cowboy and Indian ghost towns of Hollywood, but also in reality there are ghost towns. And these ghost towns are there are about 120 million units globally and that are vacant. Unfortunately, these could house 500 million people, and yet we have about 1 billion people living in slums. It's 863 in the south, and the balance that makes it 1 billion is in the north. So the supply and the demand do not meet each other. So there is a need for a housing strategy. Most of the strategies we see and the policies say, we're going to build 200,000 units in the next year or so, and this is what we call an output-based strategy. And we would like to have a change in that, a change in mindset, and rather than building houses, we would like to house families, to house households. And this means that the paradigm shift is moving away from output and cutting the ribbon and having pictures to results-based strategies. So this is how we'd like to see our strategies in the future. Why do we need it? I don't need to dwell too much, but there's economic meltdown, the social exclusion, and the environmental degradation. We all know that we were hit very hard in 2008, and the effects are still there. So what are the goals? One of the important goals is to achieve the Habitat Agenda. A pillar of the Habitat Agenda is adequate shelter for all. Also to contribute to the MDG 7 in slums, improving the living conditions of 100 million slum dwellers by 2020. And basically we are proposing a paradigm shift by placing housing at the center. A lot of those ghost towns that you've seen were built away from the center. In Tehran, for example, they built 200,000 houses. About 70,000 were built 60, 70 kilometers outside the city. Even though they're heavily subsidized and they would give it for 1/10 of the cost, the poor people wouldn't take it because the cost of commuting is more than their income. And so the houses are abandoned. Intentions are good, it's output-based, but the results are not happening. So the aim of the strategy is to develop national and city housing strategies. Housing is definitely to be participatory, and this is where the e-governance would come in a bit. And it would be inseparable of urban planning. So really planning mixed use and densities and so on to improve that. So I'm going to ask you a question, so please bear with me. Now, when we're talking about what guides us, there is usually housing demand, the need. And we have components for sustainable housing. I'll ask a question. What do you need to produce housing? What are the main elements that we would need? Space. What is space? In the air? Land, yeah? Thank you. Yes? Money. Yes. Resources, finance. Thank you. Yes? Yes? Labor, yeah. Material, yeah. Roads, yes. So infrastructure, the design, the materials, and the labor. Thank you all very much. This is the box in which housing ministries think. They are thinking in a box. And sorry to trick you, but this is what ministers do. And we are trying to say, listen, let's not do that. Let us move out of the box and think broader. So we go to the national level and the city level. At national level, we look at national urban policies, we look at urban economy, we look also at legislation. At city level, it's the same thing, but we go down to the urban planning, to local economic development, and local legislation. Then you do the construction, the land and the finance and infrastructure and so on. And after that, you have to do the tenure, the maintenance and management. Then you learn lessons and you go back. So we're talking about several themes that have to come into housing beyond what we just mentioned earlier. So you have the planning, you have gender, you have economy, slums and slum upgrading in the south. We have cross-cutting elements, housing rights, gender, youth, and environment. And our approach is to do exchanges of experiences, applied evidence-based research, effectiveness at scale, efficiency through partnerships, and national and local capacity development. So what is our approach? The Global Housing Strategy approach aims at identifying the challenges with the key partners. And here again, the governance aspect is very important. You have to have all the key actors involved in identifying the issues and the challenges. Now here is where we're starting to innovate a bit. So we do crowdsourcing, mass outreach, sharing on social and professional media. So you have information exchange. And then we do an information analysis. So it's information management. And of course, we don't forget the applied research, and that is now knowledge management. This cone of knowledge, if you will, is taking us to the definition of responses to the needs, to the questions that are posed up there. And the Global Housing Strategy would like to see itself as matching the responses to the challenges. We do this for each of the themes that I mentioned earlier, keeping in mind the cross-cutting issues. So we have a media strategy. We're looking at popular and professional outreach, participatory advocacy, professional and key housing agenda partners, political buy-in and partnerships with habitat agenda partners. So we are on the Urban Gateway, and there we have about 2,500 members. We are also on LinkedIn, so we've gone on 90 LinkedIn groups with an outreach of more than 600,000 professionals, experts and politicians, etc. So this is popular and professional outreach, and it costs us nothing. And the Global Housing Strategy has its own group within LinkedIn. And this is where I know that on the 15th of this month, they're stopping to do polls and questions on LinkedIn, and questionnaires, but we use that to develop the strategy, actually. So we put on the polls, and we got responses. We refined our work based on inputs from the professionals and developed our framework document. We also have in the LinkedIn group people that are exchanging, that are requesting things from us or exchanging their experiences. So we have professional dialogues on LinkedIn. I will not get into the details of the criteria, but basically we are advocating that urban planning and design, that we locate housing centrally in mixed use and high densities, that economic opportunities are produced by housing, so that housing is not isolated in the suburbs, but is an integral part of the city. Social integration, we don't want the gated communities and the ghettos. We'd like different social groups to be mixed together. Rights-based interventions, and develop gender-responsive housing. Environmentally, we need to improve the situation rather than having just houses. We need to introduce urban agriculture and different aspects of green architecture and green urban planning. And finally, more important, we are talking about the governance and partnerships. And so here we are producing housing through partnerships with the key actors that I mentioned earlier. We are encouraging corporate social responsibility, and we're introducing something new. We are calling it ASR, Academic Social Responsibility. In the north it happens, but in the south it does not. And if we are talking about design being expensive, a municipality asking us for funding to design a school or a house or whatever, we're saying, but you have your schools of architecture, your schools of urban planning, why not use this energy and these young brains to develop the concepts and ideas that you have, that you need. And if every whole semester is used in internships that are producing something for the local community, for the poorer communities in the city, we can reduce the cost dramatically and be more able to integrate academia into the development, and basically changing the role a bit of academia into a development partner. Academia also says, no, we have to stay in our ivory tower, we have to be free in thinking. But yes, you need a bit of application, you need a bit of the free thinking. And I think that combination, particularly if resources are scarce and you're in a poor community, it's very important. Part of what we've done was a competition, a global competition on urban revitalization of mass housing. Mass housing is existing in many, many countries. And it's at a time that now maybe 50, 60 years have passed on the stock that is there. So there's a lot of neglect that is happening, a lot of marginalization of these areas. In Paris, you see the fires happening. In the south, if you lose that stock, you have a very big problem in the future. So I have an international competition. We just gave out the results early last month. We have 97 teams that have come on board from 35 countries, 55 universities, 64 cities, and we had 51 jurors from all over the world. And basically, we are looking at the concepts that we are trying to promote. So we took the concepts, we asked the students to select a housing, a mass housing area in their own city. These are graphics from the competitors, by the way. So to select with the local authorities and the NGOs a mass housing project in their city, and we asked them to think and act locally, but then we wanted to go and think globally. So think global, act local. We said, let's act local and think global. So the concepts, we started to pull those out according to the criteria that we were promoting. So the urban, the economy, the social, the environmental, and the participation aspects. And a quick flash on each. So this is a bit on improving public space as part of urban design. These are different projects. Again, economic stimulation, introducing urban agriculture, introducing urban economic uses within the housing compounds. Social, again, the integration and how to be gender responsive and rights-based. Environmentally, how to improve and introduce the urban agriculture and greening, etc. And finally, the governance and partnership. The winners in this case were Spain. They got the first prize globally. The website, if you're interested to visit, is masshousingcompetition.org. We also want to come out with certain outputs, so repositioning housing within the global contemporary debate. Critical outcomes include contributing to rights-based, gender-responsive, and results-based national and city housing strategies. Inclusive cities, access to adequate housing for all. A paradigm shift, housing is part of urban planning. Systemic reforms promoted for improved quality of life. Linkages of housing with other parts of the economy. And finally, sustainable housing and neighborhoods. Before I move to my second case study, one of the interns that was supporting us is Marion. Is Marion here? Yes. So Marion is the one who put together the website and the design of that. She's Austrian by chance that we had her with us, and I would like to thank her here in her own country for doing a great job with us. Metwapa Participatory Islam Upgrading Program is now where we are trying to experiment with e-governance in slums. It seems paradoxical that you would go and do e-governance in a slum. We know the challenges of e-governance in the north, for example, reaching out to the elderly, etc., that are not. But I'll let you know why we selected this and what happened. So historically, the collaboration started in 2012 between UN Habitat, which by the way is the United Nations Human Settlements Program, and the FP7 project of FUPOL. Together, by the end of 2012, we signed an agreement, an MOU, and in 2013, Habitat joined FUPOL as a full partner. Main activities, joint publication on e-governance in developing countries. It's a new frontier that we're trying to open up. Metwapa e-participation pilot project, and conferences and dissemination, just as what we are doing here today. So why Metwapa? Metwapa is easy to manage because we are located in Nairobi in Kenya, and Mtwapa is on the east coast near Mombasa, so we can go frequently and monitor and observe and introduce the different concepts there. It's a small population, so it's manageable. Before going to Kibera, where you have 1 million people, at least here we're in less than 100,000, 60,000, etc. It's much easier to manage. And thirdly, the Kenya's technological connectivity status is quite high, about 80% mobile phone ownership in the country, so it's very high. In fact, people do that because it saves a lot of other costs that you would do. If they have to send remittances to the village, for example, in the past, they would have to give money to someone to take that 8-hour travel, submit the money to their family, etc. Very expensive, very time-consuming. They've introduced the e-banking, which is called M-Pesa, and is now being copied in other countries. But it basically, you can instantaneously transfer an amount of money to the village or to another town 8-10 hours away by car. So the mobile telephony, the competitiveness, it's lucrative. There's 3G network nearly everywhere in the country. And there are many innovations that are happening using that. One of the important reasons that we selected Mtwapa is that there is an enabling legislature. So the Constitution of Kenya 2010 is talking about public participation, inclusiveness, participation, and sustainable development as national values. The county governments of Act of 2012, local government to promote and facilitate citizen participation in the development of policies and plans, etc. Urban Areas and Cities Act require GIS mapping, of course with a lot of intelligent information. Public Financial Management Act, and the draft National Urban Development Policy and draft National Slum Upgrading and Prevention Policies. All of these are the enabling environment within which we are able to look at e-governance and the application of e-governance governance in slums. So far, we're quite early in the game, but we've implemented an e-partnership platform, Mtwapa Ongea. Ongea means talk up or speak. A blog and Mtwapa Facebook page. We are having a workshop this afternoon from 2 o'clock. So those who are interested in more details, we are going to cover that with Peter Sonntag and myself. Successfully selected the 2 pilot neighborhoods, organized 2 communities, and held the village the representatives committees. They had the elections. Next step, registration, training, retreat, and enumeration. Enumeration is very important in slum upgrading. It basically gives recognition of that the people can stay where they're staying, and they get a legitimate status which allows them now to do upgrading and improving of their slum. Also gives peace of mind. And Mtwapa to be used as a model for phase 3. Live presentation at the World Urban Forum we had just last month, a nice presentation there online, and monitoring behavioral change due to e-participation that we want to do in the future. Has it made any difference or not? Have we been able to include more people in the governance aspect using e-participation? What does it mean, etc.? Also in adapting e-governance to the slum situation, we were looking at their natural networking strengths. In the slum, they could call up to 2,000 people in a couple of hours. And they do that through a hierarchy of local leaders, young people usually. One of them started as an intern with us and is now a volunteer working with the project. And basically, as a young leader, he's able to mobilize all these people very quickly. And in doing so, we were able to find out how do we tailor now the e-governance and the use of mobile phones to the current existing networks that are there. And that, of course, builds on synergies that are already existing there. A few photographs very quickly. Some of the meeting at the county government in Kilifi is the name of the county. We agreed to have meetings with the village elders to decide on dates of elections, involve the elders in mobilization and the call for elections. Interestingly, the elders, the natural elders, were not elected when you started with the e-governance, which shows that the current situation is not reflecting what people really want. And that is how we were able to understand a bit more what are the dynamics within those areas. Meeting with the village elders in Mtwapa village, meeting with the elders to prepare for elections, residents decide on the mode of elections, elected village residents committees and committee mobilizers. So the committee mobilizers to move into the communities and mobilize them to join in the whole process of elections and in the determination of the future of their own environment through the e-governance, but also you have to marry that, the e-governance part, with the physical meetings and so on. So it's a combination of both. And then there was a lot of training on the participation. We're testing the tool in Nairobi. Introduced the blog and Facebook, and we'll talk, as I said, a bit more about that in the afternoon. A lot of the younger generation are on Facebook. They communicate through Facebook, they exchange ideas and so on. And we're trying to use them also to educate those who are not computer literate, or at least to engage them in the discussions and represent them somehow or work with them in that. The government is in full support of the e-governance, and that's the local government as well as the national government. And I must say that Mtwapa is one of the slums that we are dealing with. We are working in 34 countries in a program called Participatory Slum Upgrading Program. And when we saw the opportunity in e-governance and working with FUPOL, we said, let us test it in Kenya. If it works, we can then transport it to other countries. So how do we improve on the participation that we do through the physical way of meetings and so on, but how can we enhance that and expand it beyond that through the e-governance tools that we are experimenting with? Thank you all very much, and I'm here for any questions if you'd like.